What's going on, everybody? And welcome to the weapons tier list for our friend Slayer here, our little tiny dwarf guy. So let me just start by mentioning that this tier list is going to include weapon changes made in the Big Balance beta, which is currently ongoing. It's not over, so these could change maybe a little bit in the future, but I'm just kind of going to go with them as they are right now. So starting off in D tier, absolutely nothing. That's right. Since the beta, I honestly think that at least for Slayer, his weapons have gotten some serious upgrades. Even his ones that are maybe not so good. And I feel like nothing really belongs in D tier, which is cool. I like that. So, in C tier, probably my least favorite for him is the single axe. This has 3 stamina, armor piercing, and shield breaking ability. It's really not that bad of a weapon, but it's just kind of a bit one-dimensional because it's an elite killer, you know? It's got good damage. The animations have been sped up a little bit since the beta, but that's kind of all it can do, are like elites, you know? It lacks some cleave. It kind of struggles against hordes. It's maybe a good secondary weapon if you couple it with like the regular old hammer or the dual hammers or something like that. You're going to have plenty of speed with this one. This is not a bad weapon, but it's not a primary weapon, in my opinion. Same kind of thing goes for our B tier weapon here, the War Pick. It's got 3 stamina, and since the beta, the light attacks have all gotten linesman modifiers, meaning that they now have more cleave and can deal better with hordes. So this one is a bit of a step up from the axe, I think. It's naturally got really big headshot damage, and when you crit on a headshot, it's so much damage. Like you can one-shot a Chaos Warrior if you have a Skull Splitter on. It's quite nice. But like I said, it's also not a primary weapon, meaning like you need to run something else with it, like the Great Hammer, like the Great Axe, something that can kind of carry when you need to. Both these weapons, in my view, are meant for like certain specific situations. Like if you want to bust it out against a heavily armored elite, if you want to bust it out against like a monster or something. That's kind of the focus of these 2 weapons. I don't really see these kind of carrying too well. Just my view. Also in B tier, I've got the hammer here, and this one's also gotten some upgrades since the Big Balance beta. It's got 4.5 stamina, which is quite nice. It gives it some good defensive capabilities. The first and second light attacks both now have linesman modifiers. The push it as well has a linesman modifier, and the third light attack gets a 20% increase in crit chance, or 20% crit chance on the third light attack, which is basically kind of a weird uppercut motion. So to compensate for that, they give it more crit chance. And I actually really like this one. This can deal really well with hordes. Gives you good defensive capabilities. The charge attacks are pretty decent for elites. It does good damage. I almost put this one in A tier, but I have a bunch of other stuff there. So I figure it's kind of like the higher end of B tier, maybe almost crossing into A tier. Really like the hammer. It's the same status as on Kruger's mace, by the way, if you're interested. Very nice weapon. Bumping up to A tier, I have the dual axes. Now these have 2 stamina. They do good damage. They're fast. Since the beta, the finesse multiplier for these weapons has been increased, I think, to 2 instead of like 1.5 or something. Just meaning if you get a headshot with these, you do more damage. To, simplify it. It's got armor piercing ability. Like I said, they're fast. With this one, it lacks some crowd control. It is really good for monsters and elites. Like when I play Slayer, I have a build where I run the dual hammers and the dual axes. And I'll use the dual hammers most of the time for the hordes, and when there's a monster or a Chaos Warrior or something, I'll bust out the dual axes. I'll try to get the headshot, or I'll just go to town on the weak spot on the monster, hit him as fast as I can, do a bunch of damage. Again, in my view, not a primary weapon, but more of a secondary weapon. Not a bad choice by any stretch of the imagination, as it does have some very nice strengths and abilities, but the point, with Slayer, you're going to need another weapon with these, I think. And that, in my view, would be the dual hammers. Yes, our first S tier weapon is DLC. I'm sorry if you don't have it. But it has 4 stamina. It's got excellent crowd control ability. It's easy to use. Both the light attacks and the charge attacks, very easy to use. Simply light attack for hordes, charge attacks for elites, It works extremely well with Slayer speed. Like, you can use these on Ranger Veteran as well, but I think it kind of lacks a little bit of attack speed. But on Slayer, with its boosted attack speed and his ult, these things are absolutely insane. They shred through unarmored enemies like nothing. And they're pretty decent for elites. So easily, in my view, an S tier weapon. The next S tier weapons are not DLC, so if you do not have it, here you go. The first one, no big shock to anybody, is the Great Hammer. It's got 3 stamina, armor piercing ability, charge attacks give great crowd control. The light attacks are very nice for taking out elites, especially with Slayer's stacking damage buff, high tally, and all that. Very nice. Big damage. Good defensive. This is like a weapon that's good for, like, if you want to be offensive and kind of let your offense be your defense, this is a good weapon for that, because you can just clear out a whole line of hordes and take out elites if you need to. That's a very nice weapon. Now, the weapon that got the biggest upgrade since the beta, in my opinion, is the Great Axe right here. This one already had armor piercing and shield breaking ability, but it has been increased from 2 stamina to 3, so a little bit more defensive there. And the heavy attacks, if you guys remember, those kind of sideways heavy attacks used to only hit like 1 or 2 enemies max. They now have linesman modifiers on them, meaning that they can deal with hordes. Finally, yes! I love this weapon. And now it's even better. The push attack as well gets a linesman modifier. The third light attack gets an additional 20% crit chance on this one, and that's awesome, because that's like his biggest hit, and that's going to work really nicely with his passive ability, which is each hit gives you more damage. So if you do, 1, 2, 3 hits, unless you have that talent that gives him an extra stack, that could be max stacks, 30% extra damage, and you get more crit chance. I mean, come on, that's big damage right there, man. This thing does excellent damage. It's very great for hordes now, and it was always great for elites. So that's kind of where I have things. I have 3 S tier weapons: the dual hammers, the Great Axe, and the Great Hammer. I have 1 A tier weapon, that is the dual axes. 2 B tier weapons, the war pick and the hammer. A C tier weapon, the single axe, and nothing in the D tier. Credit to Fat Shark and the modding community out there for kind of getting this whole thing started and improving the weapons in this game. That's all I got, guys. Take care.